Hi, this is our first formal session, and in the first session, we are going to focus on two areas. The part one, we will focus on the concepts of business analysis, and part two, we will focus on software development lifecycle. These are the basically two areas we will create a focus. As you already know, we this is an interactive sessions, so you will be um, sharing your inputs through the chat. You can also speak up, no problem. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Now, the first slide, we are going to talk about what is business analysis. Okay, in order to understand that, we want to know first of all what is your understanding about the business and what is your understanding about analysis. Let's basically understand these two words separately. So, could you please share me what is business means to you? When someone says the business, we use this terminology on everyday basis. So, what exactly is a business? When do we call something as a business? Okay, let me rephrase my question. What does business offer to you? Okay, it is valuable and it's delivering the services. That's right. Okay, what else? Product and services. That's right. The business exists only when it offers either the product or services or both. That's right. That's when we call it as a business. Okay, what are the different types of businesses? What are the different characteristics or properties you can consider? It's entity type. It could be government, it could be um, non-profit organization, it could be private organization, or it could be private public partnership, right? That we call it a PPP model. Yes, so it could be one of those, right? Yes, and a business has a model or life cycle. I don't understand what do you mean by model or cycle? Business may offer a product or services in a particular sector. For example, it could be pharma is a sector. There could be various companies offering different types of products or services. IT is one of the sector, or finance as a sector. Finance and insurance is another sector, right? So there could be different types of the product and services offered in a different types of industries, right? So that's you can identify the particular industry. What else? Organization has. Yes, when you Abhishek, when you mention model or cycle means a step or activity to deliver a product or services to the customer or the client, right? That's correct. What do we call that? That's very important part you have mentioned. What is that the process of delivering the product or services to the customer? What does that mean? That's your operations. Operations means you procure, then you manufacture, you package, you distribute, and you deliver, right? So all those part basically are part of your operations. The supporting activities are your marketing to build the brand, reach out to the more customers, create the brand value and create the brand recognition, right? And the HR is another support activities, and finance, accounting are another support activities, right? So those are basically supporting the operations. So here the customer needs a particular product and they approach a particular organization, and when they receive, they pay the money and then they receive the goods. That's how they can do the fulfillment, what you're talking about, right? That's what is all about. For example, if you go on the Amazon, what the Amazon basically business model is, they offer a platform for customers to uh, explore different items displayed on their website, and they also offer the customer to see the details about the product that is mentioned by seller, and they also offer a platform for the buyer to leave the feedback for the future buyer. So you, when you go to Amazon, you will get to see the product and product from different perspective. You may have multiple images, then the product details, product category, where it is coming from, how much it cost, if there is any discount, what could be the discount, right? So, and in addition to that, you also will see what are the previous buyer's experience, and based on that you can basically make a decision whether it is worth buying or not. So that's the basically a platform the Amazon offering, where you have the buyer and seller are coming together in a marketplace and doing the business, right? So that's basically online marketplace. That's simply. And of course Amazon also has other business model. That's uh, they are the largest publisher, right? Digital publisher. So they what they do, they offer the publishing services to self published authors, and also they offer a platform to publishing houses to sell their books through the Amazon network, right? So that's the basically business model. So that's, so what are the operations is basically for Amazon. So here the operations will be the sourcing the product, displaying the product, and uh, the helping the customers to buy the product, putting into the cart, shipping the product, and after the shipment is completed, right, collecting that money and giving it to the seller and keeping their the margins, right? That's the basically business model. Now you tell me, what is more to it? For example, there are 10 different banks are offering banking services. So how they are different from each other? Now this is the next level we need to learn. So this is a next level. So it is highly the specific to the organization. So what is that different we want to learn? So when you are a business analyst, when you start basically understanding the organization, so you have understood a broad level, what is organization doing, what are the mission, goal, vision, objective of the organization, what kind of a product and services it is offering, who are their customers, how the product and services are delivered, okay, based on what industry it is coming, I mean it is into. So, and what are the different regulations will be applicable to the organization. Of course when you see the sectors, then you will know different regulatory bodies will be basically monitoring the organizations, and or basically the organizations will fulfill those regulatory requirements, right? Apart from that, there is also difference between the similar businesses. Like for example, if you're talking about the IT companies, if IT service providers are there, then there is a Infosys, there is a Wipro. These are the two Indian. Then they're leading Indian the what we call IT service providers, and of course there is a TCS and many other companies are there. and TCS is of course the largest one. I should have taken that name first, right? Sorry about that. And then we also have Accenture, Capgemini, many other companies are there who are also offering similar services. So what is the difference? Question?
Basically, what I see is
Hmm.
the service companies work in different domain kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you see TCS
Mm-hmm.
does uh, has its own in-house products
Mm-hmm.
as well as it works for a third party
Mm-hmm.
for some other companies. For example, JP Morgan
Mm-hmm.
or the Passport Seva, the government of India.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we follow mixed kind of model and not just pure supporting role kind of.
But that could be the case for other the businesses as well. For example, when you see uh, Infosys, they have a Finacle as a product, right? And they also offer the customized services. So, so how do we differentiate? I mean, I'm just trying to understand how do we differentiate between these? What is that key things that basically differentiate between the two different entities from the same sector, and who are actually competitors? For example, Airtel and Geo, or Airtel and maybe whoever is their nearest, Vodafone, right? So these are the basically two uh, telecom service providers in India. So how do you know that there is a difference? What is that actually? Branding, yes. Tosin, branding, yes, important, but how do they brand? What is the basis of the branding? It's their core values, their culture, their the way of basically producing and delivering the goods, right? And their belief. That's the most part important. When you could talk about the value, beliefs, and all. So, what is important to them for one company, and what is that may not be important to other companies? So that's how you will see there is a cultural difference in the organizations, and the way they provide the services, the way they manufacture the product, and the way they service their customers. There could be difference, and there could be of course a difference between the product itself. Hmm? So vision, mission, values, processes will all have an impact when you are analyzing the two different companies in the same industry. I'm sorry I cut you off, Abhishek. You wanted to say something?
Yeah. Also, I would like to add, apart from the business,
Hmm.
they work in different verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you see for Gap, Gemini, and TCS, apart from uh, working with the Indian banks,
Hmm.
they also collaborate with foreign banks
Mm-hmm.
for in payments and data risk.
Right.
But for Wipro and all, they are mostly into Indian market and not into the European and the Asia packages. That's
Maybe you need to do little more research. All of them serve in international they serve globally actually, you know. So they do have the only thing difference is here is we have to see how they deliver, what are the different processes they follow, what are their beliefs are there, you know. So that is important. Okay. So now you know what is business, right? When we talk about business, all these factors basically we analyze, and then we consider, right? And that is how we it becomes a business, right? Now, next word I would like to emphasize on analysis. Do you know what is analysis means to you?
analysis is basically analysis is the business gathering or getting the requirements and studying the feasibility
Okay. Let's go back to a little bit of a basics. What does analysis word means to you? Don't look at the dictionary, but when we say I'm analyzing something, what am I doing? Toss in, it means evaluation, analysis, both are synonymous word. Anything else you would like to add? What exactly you do when you say I'm analyzing something? So what exactly you do? Review, again similar word. But what is the process you follow
Ana-
when you want to evaluate or review or analyze?
Basically checking the feasibility or whether the proposed solution is doable, not doable, and if it's doable, then what input is required, and basically breaking down the whole requirement into terms of pieces.
Okay, what all you said is right, but that's into a complex situation. And from the business analysis perspective, yes, it is right. But when we are learning about the word analysis, because we need to understand the concept of this, then we'll understand our role. So when we talk about analysis, what you mentioned in your answer, one of the statement you mentioned, breaking down. The breaking down information is your analysis. When we follow the analysis process, I'm analyzing something, or I'm evaluating something. It means I'm breaking down the information in my mind, and that we are doing it unknowingly, and that is how we understand how things work, right? Once we know how it works, then only we know what is a defect, what is a problem, what is the improvement opportunities. So in order to understand something, we need to break down that information systematically. Same thing we did. We, in order to understand what is business, we try to see, we broke down the information from the different perspective, the entity type, the product and services, the customers, the operations, many things we have studied, right? Same thing, analysis. For example, if you say your car is broken down in middle of the road, and if you want to basically understand or you want to analyze what exactly happened, what do? You try to start the car. If it doesn't work, then you go out and open the bonnet and see if there is anything. If you have good knowledge, then you may basically explore few things. But in case if you don't, you may call the mechanic. So what is the difference between you and mechanic? When you are doing analysis, what went wrong, and when the mechanic arrives and he does the analysis, what went wrong? So the difference is basically the knowledge what you have about a process, how the engine works, right? So that the engine working process, so there are few things must work, few machines and the few things must work in a particular fashion in order to function that engine. So based on your limited knowledge, you must have checked item 1 or 2, like you must have checked the carburetor, you must have checked maybe the water in or maybe the fuel pipe, right? But when the mechanic arrives, he has a broader and deeper knowledge, so he will have more steps to follow and more areas to explore. So he will break down the information in different way, and then he will understand what went wrong. Sometimes they are so expert, even based on the noise they can tell you where things went where things went wrong, and then they can suggest whether they can fix it. You can go, or maybe you need to uh, toll away your vehicle. You see, so this is the basically what we do is analysis. I'll give you one simple example now. If in order to understand, let me open the Excel sheet and share with you. Just give me 1 second. I'll share the Excel sheet. Just give me 1 second. You all can see the Excel sheet? Yeah?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to basically do is help you to understand the analysis, concept of analysis basically we talked about. That's breaking down the information. Now when we talk about breaking down the information, here it is the technique is called as a functional decomposition. Okay, decompose means again same thing as a breaking down. When you say the decomposing something means the bacteria are breaking down the particular thing. That's how they disintegrate the particular the item or object, right? And that is basically that is the way it is decomposition happen, right? Now when you talk about, let us talk about the process perspective. Okay, so let's see if there is a process, and I'll give you the same example. Here we will talk about the admission process of Amazon. Okay, so there are the three parts, components are there. One is basically inquiry, and what was the second part is enrollment. Then you have is training, right? So let's understand this. If you want to break down what happens in the inquiry phase, you send out the inquiry, or you fill out the inquiry form, right? Then what's the second one? What did you do? You just recently did all this thing. Anyone? What's the second thing? You received the training details, right? After studying the details, you send out queries, if any, right? That's it. You receive the reply to your queries. So this is the simple steps. So if you are happy, then basically you confirm the training. Then for the enrollment, you receive the invoice and payment link, right? Then you complete the payment, you receive the payment receipt plus what you receive, admission process. Then you may have that admission, filling out admission form and signing the agreement. I hope both of you have done it, right? So if you have not done it, complete that one. Okay. So signing the agreement and other part, right? Then what's the next part you remember? Once you did that, then the training material is sent, dispatched, and you receive the courier details, right? So this is the part. And what happens in the training? Basically, you receive the training link, right? then you attend the training, you complete the the assignment, you pass the online exam, right? This is all about training, and after that you receive the CBS certificate. Is this right? This is what happens. Question. Now if I want to basically, we have this is the admission and the training. Instead of admission I would say training process. Let's call this as a training process. Okay, but now if I want to do more systematically, then I will say this is one process. Let me just number them. This is process 2. Let's basically call this as a process 3. Training is your process 3, and this one is, I will call it as 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. So we have systematically. This is 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4. Same this one, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, right, and 3.5. So this is all about your question. Let's make it look a little pretty. So let's okay. Any question? What happened to this one? Okay. All right. So you can see.
Not from my side.
So this is when we talk about analysis. This is the formal way of breaking down the information, and that is how you understand. Here, in this case, we have basically broken down the training process, and we have categorized them into the 3 areas. One is the inquiry, enrollment, and training, and further we talked about how we can basically further uh, break down each of the sub processes, right? And these are the tasks. One more item I would like to basically stretch it. Let me. Oops, there's something wrong. Yeah. Okay. So now if you consider this as basically these are the activities, right? This is the process, and these are your tasks. Okay. So this is how you can basically consider the okay. So these are the process is your training process, and these are the activities like inquiry, enrollment is an activity, and training. And if you break them down further, then you will have them as a task. These are all 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. These are all the task, right? So remember, this is how we can basically the simplify the complex concept. So we, if it is a complex business processes, then we will basically okay. This is okay. So there is some issue. Alright. So this is nothing but the process, activities, and task. Okay. So we have systematically broken down the training process into the activities and the task to understand how it works. Although you are doing it unknowingly, but when you start basically breaking down, it becomes easier for everyone to understand. And this is exactly same thing will happen when you go to the organization. If you want to basically you communicate with your stakeholders, and how do you communicate with the stakeholders, and you want to basically um, create that understanding and also save the time. So you will do your homework, prepare all this information and discuss with them, so they can basically read and validate what is right and wrong, especially about the current state. And based on that, it becomes easier for the stakeholders to discuss what are the problems are there and how it can be improved, right? But if you are expecting them to do all the work, it becomes difficult for them to spend a whole lot of money, whole lot of time, basically, not money. And another part is that it is expected of you as a business analyst to basically come well prepared. Of course, there will be situations where the information may not be available. So at that time, you can basically discuss with the stakeholders and the uh, collect the relevant information and put them into uh, structured way, so that the next discussion, it will facilitate your future discussions, right? So let me basically go back to our slide now. All right, now we have understood the concept of what is business, what is analysis, and how do we break down the information in a structured way. Remember, the analysis is basically, business analysis is, it's little more than that. We are analyzing the business for various reasons: to handle the change, to implement certain changes, to incorporate regulatory requirement, right? Or basically to take care of the new opportunity, or to handle a new situation in the industry. So there could be various reasons the change may be required to be implemented in an organization. We as a business analyst, we always see how the change is basically going to impact on the organization. That is the first and foremost basically studies we need to complete, and then we see what is actually the problem and how it impacts, and internally and externally, and what we should do in order to basically um, uh, provide the solution, so that we can incorporate and implement that solution easily, and we can basically take care of that issue. Okay, so next I would like to talk about this next level is the role. Who is business analyst? For some reason I think a couple of slides are missed, but let me go back to that. The business analyst is basically a person who works as a liaison function among the stakeholders. The stakeholders could be internal or external, and the, so why do we want to interact with the stakeholders? So in order to understand the structure, policies, operations of an organization and recommend the solution. So this is the basically the business analyst role. He or she will also be responsible for analyzing the business needs of their clients or the stakeholders, to help in identifying their business problems and propose the solution. So this is the basically a role of a business analyst. I may have gone a little too fast. Let me just break down that sentence for you to understand. Here we are also analyzing the business need. Means we are analyzing the problem, or analyzing the opportunity what organization may have in for the future, and we'll see how this basically analyzing this business need for the clients and the stakeholders. So the stakeholders are basically, they could be internal or they could be external stakeholders. External could be your vendors, regulators, right? Internal could be your uh, the employees who will be using the solution, right? Someone may basically fund sponsor the solution, or somebody may use the solution. So there could be someone may maintain the solution. These are all your stakeholders, right? Someone may build the solution. So there could be business stakeholders, there could be technical stakeholders. So this is basically what how we collaborate with the clients and the stakeholders. Clients, we are mentioning if you are IT service company and you are providing the solution to your client. So in that case, you collaborate with the client and understand, right, the business problem and propose a solution. In case if it is your internal the solution and your internal stakeholders, so in that case you can use the stakeholders, right? And this is where we understand the problems. Okay. And next, basically, now many of us may be considering what is the role of a business analyst. Now this is a little bit more detail. Of course, it is not complete, and BA leads all activities related to business case development. Business case, in order to develop the business case, you need to develop the business need, document business need. Then you also need to define the solution, and based on that you will do the cost versus benefit analysis and benefit versus risk analysis, and you will build the business case to justify the funding for that particular change. So that is your business case development. Then requirement development, that is basically planning, elicitation, collaboration, and requirement uh, confirmation, and documentation, maintenance. That's basically your requirement development and management, right? Then you may also basically have the challenges, basically how to apply the analytical skill to the business request that are high level and lack the information. So how do you basically define that um, concept to the reality? So that's process, basically we start with from the business need, and further we develop high level solution scope. Then again go to the stakeholders, understand everyone's requirement um, from the solution perspective, and implement them. For example, a legal person may have a requirement that a report must be sent in a particular format. So that's basically you are talking about is sending the report, right? So that's his requirement from the regulatory perspective. But the operation head may want to say that the solution must be secured, and it must have particular the technical requirement that could be 128-bit encryption, like that. Or the auditor may come back to you and say that we want an audit trail in this particular format. So every stakeholder is giving their own requirement um, from their perspective when it comes to the solution, right? So when you are building the solution, your objective is basically to solve the problem, but to ensure that uh, if it is impacting the different stakeholders, their needs are also incorporated. So this is the basically what we are talking about. Now in this case there is the little bit of a caution. The stakeholders will communicate the business wants and the needs, sometimes in the clear and sometimes in ambiguous way also, although it is mentioned unambiguous. But it is our duty is basically as a business analyst, we need to collaborate with the stakeholders to ensure that the requirements are clear, consistent, and um, correct and complete, right? So that the requirement is basically it's suitable for uh, the development purpose. Okay. So this is basically what we have, and there is a small the cycle what it is showing. And here if you see the first, it you can basically start with the strategic planning. It's a strategic planning we complete, and then we do the enterprise analysis, then the requirement management, then design and construction. After the design and construction, the testing happens, then solution is delivered, and again it goes into the operational maintenance. So this is the basically the life cycle of the change life cycle. However, our role as a business analyst will change, and we will have a different the artifacts to be delivered at each stages and different activities to be performed at each of the phases. Okay, so this is basically, we will look into another slide that's more linear. Here it is. I hope you can read this. It's little blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sandhya, I have a question here. Uh, Suppose we have a kind of a new requirement, okay, call it an enhancement. So who and how is it decided the cost involved in the enhancement or the requirement?
Uh, okay, so who will decide? Basically, it is decided the steps when we go to the high level solution scope. Okay, and that during that time only we'll decide. The first stage is that we define what is the problem or what is uh, the opportunity, and what is the impact on the organization, impact on the people and organization. If it is worth going ahead, and I mean it is beneficial, then we go to the next level. But along with the beneficial, we also check whether it is a doable, feasible, profitable. All those things are criterias are tested, and we go to the next level. And when we define the solution scope, at that time we define what are the high level features and functionalities a solution should have. It means what are the capacities and conditions the solution must fulfill. And based on that, project manager will work with the business analyst and talk about the funding, how much money is required. So depending on the features and functionalities and the other requirements are mentioned in the solution scope, then they will decide how much work is involved, and how many people will be required, that is the resources, and how long the project will be there, what are the software, hardware and other tools are required, what are the different types of certifications are required if it is needed, and any other additional cost is involved. Okay, so when all those costs are accumulated, I mean calculated, and they are presented. So this is how it works basically. So you have the cost, that's the budget, and also the schedule is provided by the project manager. So once you have the budget and the schedule, and again along with that high level scope, then you go back to the stakeholders, and again if there is any additional requirements are there, you can collect, or you can based on whatever the information you have, you can validate whether uh, this particular solution will be profitable. Okay, because the project manager already told you whether it is a feasible and doable, but now you have to go back to the stakeholders and see whether it is profitable, because they are the one who will tell you whether it is profitable or not, and what will be the revenue model, and how, if there are any changes required to be implemented along with the solution, so what are those. Okay, so that is important, you to have a discussion before you build the business case, because there will be a lot of assumption and hypothesis will be considered. For example, if you say, if we develop this particular app and launch, so we will expect x number of revenue, or if we develop enhance our existing solution from this to this, so this is what impact it will have on the brand value, or how much money we will save. Again, saving is also a revenue. So all those factors we need to consider, and those factors when you consider, you have to basically put them. Okay, what is the first year in income, what is the second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, when is the break even is going to happen, and when actually you start getting the revenues, and what is the, again of course along with the revenue you will also have the cost involved, that is operating cost, right? So what is that? So all that have to be considered and calculated and presented in the business case. Now don't worry about at this stage, we will have a very detailed exercise on the business case. At that time we will handle that one. So we will take the example and we will talk about how do we basically calculate the uh, benefits for each factors, and how do we basically justify our investment to the sponsor, right? So that we can basically we will cover that in the later stage when we do the strategy analysis at that time. Okay, so this is the what we talk about. The business analysis will analyst will go through all these areas. So the business analyst, he will go through the planning, elicitation, documentation, confirmation, that is the strategy, and the again requirement analysis and validation. So this is from the requirement perspective it has put in, because there are additional steps are there. For example, strategy analysis is there. Then once it is done, then in the strategy analysis, then you have three areas: the business need, the solution scope, and the business case. So after that the project is kicked off, and then you start your the planning phase, that is a business analysis planning, and the requirement analysis and design part, right? So this is how it will look like. When we go to the SDLC part, we will learn all these phases in detail. This actually will be covered into our the requirement planning elicitation session in detail. But in SDLC, we will cover the SDLC phases in detail. Next, we talk about the responsibilities of a business analyst. There are various responsibilities are there. For example, identifying the business need of the customer, project and the project stakeholders to help determine the solution to the business problems. And they are also responsible for the activities related to business case development, requirement management, strategic planning, enterprise analysis, requirement analysis, construction, testing, delivery, operations, and maintenance. Various stages you have different role to play. There are a couple of definitions of the business analysis. I think this slide is misplaced. It's supposed to be the first slide. The definition is BCS, and the Chartered Institute of IT toward have a definition. It is an internal consultancy role that has a responsibility for investigating business systems and identifying options for improving the business systems and bringing the needs of the business with the use of IT. Here when I break down this information, it is basically it could be internal consultancy or external consultancy role also. It could be either way. Has a responsibility for investigating business systems, um, not only the business systems but the business system, the business processes, uh, and also the stakeholders needs. So many things we need to investigate. The business system is just one part of it. Okay, and then of course we, based on all the details, we identify the options for improving the business system, processes, operations, and even sometimes a role also. Okay, and bringing the need of the business with the use of idea. Yes, so this is how we fulfill the need of the business with the use of IT. Now it is most of the time it is with IT. Okay, there was one company called CSBA. They were the first one offering the certified software business analyst. I'm not sure whether they are still around, but yes, they were there. So what they mean is that they uniquely placed organization to provide a strong link between business community and information technology. That's right. Business analyst is a strong link between the business community and the IT technology. That's where they bridge the gap between them. But of course, there is much more to that actually. Just more than the link and more than the bridging the gap. They have to do many activities during the change management lifecycle. And of course, there are some more the definitions. You can go through them later on. It's all mentioned in the book. This is IIB's version 2. The it talks about it is a set of task and the techniques that is used to work as a liaison among the stakeholders in order to understand the structure, policies, and operations of the organization and recommend a solution that enable the organization to achieve its goal. So, this was a good definition, but it was a little bit limited because here we are talking about the problem and solution. There are two different things, and how do we basically achieve the goal using the set of a task and techniques which is mentioned in the BABOK 2. But it's a little more than that because solution is only a part of the change. So organizations, now we talk about implementing the change, and there's a lot of analysis goes into that, and then before you even define, before you even start kick off the project. So that part is important to consider. So when we talk about the change, so that strategy analysis, then project kickoff, then planning, and the requirement analysis and design, construction, testing, and in the transitioning and closure, project closure, and then later is a benefit realization. So there's a long process of implementing the change. So the version number 3 is basically emphasizing on the change. If you see the book now, it is more of the talk about the change. Okay. When we start the chapter number 1 in the BABOK version number 3, we will basically emphasize on all the key concept as well as the definition. Okay. And here is a basically a brief about the role of business analyst in the software development life cycle. If you see the software development life cycle is it is aligned, like in the initiation phase you are basically working on the business need document, defining the opportunity or the problem in detail, then the solution scope or the system concept stage, you are defining the solution scope, that is identifying the scope of the solution in terms of the features and functionalities, identifying the capacity in terms of the performance, reliability, availability, scalability, environment, and operation needs, and feasibility and the initial risk analysis. That is what we do. When we go to the business case, that is ROI or the cost versus benefit analysis, at the time we check whether check the appropriateness studies for um, viability and suitability, and the business case, that is feasibility and profitability of the solution. Okay. And also we do the benefit versus risk analysis. During the project planning, the requirement planning, the plan for the BA approach and deliverables, identify the stakeholders and their role in the organization and within the project. So this is the project planning, is a lot of activities are performed, and this part what we are talking about, the BA approach and the list of deliverables, identify the stakeholders and their role in the organization within the project. This is, it goes into something called project charter, or you can also consider them as a management approach document. So all these things are part of that, where you define how we want to go ahead with the project, what methodology we will follow, and then who are our stakeholders, what is the nature of collaboration, how the governance will happen, means how the decisions are made, what are the different committees will be there, and how we who will be part of the committees and what will be their role. Okay. And how often we will meet, what is the method of communication. So that all will be basically defined at this stage, and we inform the stakeholders about this. Okay. And along with that we also talk about the BA performance and communicate with them. When it comes to the requirement analysis, that's the next phase. Then we elicit the requirement, we communicate the requirement, confirm them, then we scope the requirement, document the requirement. So that is what we do. And we define the solution in terms of the BRD, prepare and present the BRD to the larger audience, and we obtain the sign off from the relevant stakeholders. We verify and validate the solution against the organizational need, strategy, capability, and capacity. So these are the basically role what we play during these phases. Okay, so next slide will focus on remaining phases. In the project designing, this typically the business analyst will basically analyze the requirement and prepare the solution requirement. Solution requirement is typically we will write the functional requirement and non-functional requirement. That is what it takes to build a solution, right? So that is how we will have to define this requirement in detail. Then we will support the requirement description through prototyping, modeling like a UML, and then we validate and verify and validate the requirement, right? We support the technical team in solution designing and development and testing activities. So here it is mentioned. Next part. In the development phase, we monitor the technical work to ensure that development is happening as per the functional requirement. And we review and sign off the test scenarios and or the test cases. We prepare the user manual and complete the use cases. And sometimes the user manuals are also prepared by users. Okay? So it depends on the situation. If it is required, you can prepare. Then you have is a managing the requirement change. So there are various ways you can manage the requirement changes, and that is again if it is the adaptive, if it is adaptive means agile style, or if it is a plant driven or the traditional styles. Okay, so whichever the methodology is there, then it could be formal or informal change management process. So we define the process in the planning phase, and in, uh, we manage the change during the development and testing phase. In the testing phase, our role is basically to monitor the testing activities, actively participate on a daily testing development. Let me just increase this one. Okay, actively participate on a daily testing development team review meetings and resolving the issues if any, and user training. There could be a user training required before uh, we conduct the user acceptance testing, right? So these are the different testings. Then you have is implementation, rollout of the idea or the request, monitoring the solution performance in the production environment. Then we have is resolving the issues and the problems during the implementation, sending the status report to the business stakeholders. Now, the sending the status reports to the business stakeholders, this is about the implementation, but otherwise also we have the steering committee meeting and the working committee meeting throughout the project life cycle, and that can be depending on the stakeholders comfort. It can be monthly or it can be quarterly, or it can be sometimes if the project is crucial and it is going in the fast paced, it could be bi-weekly also. At the time we communicate the project, basically um, uh, the, the status and the issues and the risk, all those things are communicated. Then the user training, if it is required, you can give them. Again, user training, the business users you can give, but technical training will be given by the technical team. Then during the closeout, you may have to help the project manager to prepare the post-implementation documentation, and the post-implementation reviews need to be conducted and completed. Once the solution goes into the operation and maintenance, then you will have to see what are the options and opportunities are available to enrich and enhance the solution by adding or removing the features and the functionalities that those are can be considered as a mini project that are needed by the organization and the stakeholders. And this process will continue as long as solution is in its life cycle. So that is pretty much what we do during the project life cycle. Okay. It sounds a lot of information at this stage, but once we start studying our the SDLCs and different types of methodologies, then things will be more clear. And when we approach the BABOK version, BABOK, the guide version number 3, at the time also this will be further discussed. Okay, so it may sound little overwhelming, don't worry about it. I just want to know if you have any queries before I go to the next slide.
No queries from my side.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I like the way you explain each and everything in detail.
Thank you.
Another thing is
Mm.
the current Zoom is good.
Mm.
Just keep the Zoom.
Oh, okay. The earlier it was little, it was not visible, right? Yeah, very sorry about that. All right. What I'm going to do is that now it's already okay. Yeah, don't be overwhelmed. All this thing will be repeated at least 3 to 4 times, and detailed. So definitely, this is just we are touching at the very high level. Hmm? So at later stage we will dive down in deeper and basically learn each and every concept in detail. Okay. All right. So what we will do that we will stop here for today, and then we will continue tomorrow.